Hello everyone, I'm Kira Capiccioli, and this week we're focusing on the philosopher Rene Descartes. So let's begin with an overview and background. The 17th century signaled the end of the medieval era and the beginning of the modern world. In philosophy during this time, there was a shift away from metaphysics toward epistemology, largely due to Descartes' influence and work. Descartes was the first philosopher to study the process of thinking itself. He began the epistemological turn, a major transformation in the character of philosophy. This new transformation embodied devotion to acquiring knowledge about knowledge. According to Descartes, before we can reasonably evaluate any beliefs about reality, we must inquire into the nature of the instrument we use to observe it. This shows how Descartes was more concerned about our thinking process and how we come up with the conclusions we deduce. This new modern philosophy that Descartes was a part of originated from two major changes going on at the time. The first one was loss of central authority by the Roman Catholic Church, and the second was proliferation of scientific advances. Descartes was Catholic. However, he argued that each person has their own ability to process the natural light of reason. He said that there is no need for authority in order to interpret the Bible. He really believed that each person must examine what is true and false afresh and not just accept something because someone else claims it is true. Also, during this time, the distinction between science and philosophy was not clear. Therefore, Descartes made a proposal which stated, "Let's start afresh, throwing out everything we think we know and build a system of knowledge based entirely on ideas whose truth can be clearly and distinctly known to us firsthand." He wanted to start from the beginning and create a solid foundation from which he could discover truth. Going back, here's a little overview of Descartes' life. He was born in Touraine, French province, and at 9 years old he attended Jesuit college at La Fleche, where he learned a variety of subjects. On November 10, 1619, Descartes had a revelation that transformed him and claimed it was from the Spirit of Truth. He believed that he had been encouraged to establish a universal method of reasoning based on mathematical principles that would guarantee the absolute certain truth of its results. This revelation motivated Descartes, and he secluded himself and devoted his time to his studies. In his studies, he rejected the scholastic model and turned to first-hand observations and deductions. He often conducted science experiments and dissections, and made important discoveries. However, his work was interrupted when he agreed to move in with Princess Elizabeth in Stockholm. He did not get to work very much when he was there, and he ended up dying in February with pneumonia. Overall, Descartes is known as the father of modern philosophy, and as the original archetype of the modern rationalist. He relied on his own reason, and he refused to accept as true anything that did not square with what he had personally verified as true. He believed that the thinking self was the foundation of all certainty. As mentioned earlier, Descartes was a rationalist. Rationalism, by definition, is an epistemological position in which reason is said to be the primary source of all knowledge, superior to sense evidence. They believe that only reason can distinguish reality from illusion and give meaning to experience. Many of these truths come from a priori ideas, or innate ideas. These are truths that are not derived from observation or experience, but characterized as being certain, deductive, universally true, and independent of all experience. For them, reason is the ultimate test of truth. Another part of rationalism is the coherence theory of truth. This is truth tests in which new or unclear ideas are evaluated in terms of rational or logical consistencies and in relation to already established truths. So once one fundamental truth is established, they can build off that truth. The ultimate criteria for originating truths is clarity and distinctiveness. Their overall goal was to attain absolute certainty of the sort possible in mathematics. Descartes' first philosophical work was The Rules for the Direction of the Mind. It contained overall 21 principles. The two we're going to focus on is Rule 3 and 4. Rule 3 states, "Once we have chosen a subject to study, we should confine ourselves to what we can clearly intuit and deduce with certainty for ourselves." In other words, we must look for ourselves with new eyes and new understanding, and we can't be influenced by earlier thinkers. He also cautioned against authoritative thinking when we are too heavily influenced by the opinions of others and our own experience and clear thinking is clouded. Rule number 4 states, there is a need for a method for finding truth. And this brings us to our next slide. Descartes' method for finding truth begins with doubt. Descartes believed that a mathematically precise method was the only reliable way to discover the truth about the universe. Reason was the only way to find truth. He claimed that earlier philosophy did not demand rational comprehension from the individual intellect. and it did not rest solely on ideas known through the clear light of natural reason. Natural reason, also known as common sense, is the ability to think that is found in all normal humans. He believed all reasoning individuals could apply this method to basic questions concerning human nature, truth, and the existence of God. The power of forming good judgment and of distinguishing truth from the false is by nature equal in all men. He didn't believe that some people were more rational than others. All of Descartes' work is done in the first person. However, Descartes intended for the reader to interpret the I as referring to themselves and not just him. He wanted his readers to be able to personalize what he was saying and apply his arguments as if they were your own. In one of his rules, he states, "We must not accept anything we can doubt at all," which leads to methodic doubt, deliberately doubting everything it is possible to doubt in the least degree so that what remains will be known with absolute certainty. In order to apply this doubt, he had to rely on a standard of truth, which could tell him whether or not it was reasonable to doubt something. In his standard of truth, Descartes had a general rule: the things which we can see very clearly and distinctly are all true. Clear, by definition, was that which is present and apparent to an attentive mind, and distinct was that which is so precise and different from all other objects that it contains within itself nothing but what is clear. Descartes rejected anything he did not know clearly and distinctly. However, not everyone agreed with this method. Some philosophers claim that the standard itself is subjective and cannot be known with clarity and distinctness. They say that clear and distinct can vary from individual to individual. As touched on earlier, we come to this idea of innate ideas. A priori knowledge is derived from reason without reference to sense of experience. For example, a square has 4 right angles. A posteriori knowledge is empirical knowledge derived from sense experience and not regarded as universal because the conditions under which it is acquired change, perceivers vary, and factual relationships change. The example used in the book is the statement, "My shirt is white," which can be true for that circumstance, but is not universally or eternally true. Descartes believed that we are born with certain innate ideas and that they are implanted to us by God. Using innate ideas and standard of truth, Descartes wanted to find an absolute, certain, indubitable starting point for his philosophy, and he chose the methodic doubt as mentioned earlier. Descartes wanted to use skepticism to establish complete certainty. He does this through his work called Meditation. Descartes intended for the reader to read one part a day. He begins by asking if it is rationally possible to doubt everything, then from there tears down the old scholastic philosophy and attempts to replace it with rational order. His goal was for the reader to become the Cartesian I, and will have torn down and rebuilt his or her beliefs on a solid rational foundation. Before his investigations, Descartes assumed that the most true and certain things known come from the senses, but now recognizes that our senses sometimes fail us and are therefore unreliable. Descartes rejects sense knowledge as a sufficient foundation for certainty. He rejects the primacy of external physical world because it is possible that the whole so-called real world is nothing but a hallucination. He even goes as far to say that maybe this life is just a dream. Even Descartes struggled with seriously doubting his experiences of the real world. Descartes suggests that the root of these deceptions is an evil genius. He states, "I shall then suppose some evil genius, not less powerful than deceitful, has employed his whole energies in deceiving me." Descartes reduced his world to himself and one all-powerful, all-evil source of deception. Descartes even goes as far to question, could the evil genius so arrange things that nothing is as I think it is? He thought he might even be able to deceive me regarding certain innate ideas. He thought he was being deceived about his own existence. From this thought of doubt and an idea of evil genius, Descartes comes to the conclusion that we do exist based on the idea of cognito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. This embodies basically that no person can doubt his or her own existence as a conscious thinking entity while being aware of thinking about anything. This idea of the thinking self is foundational to Descartes' philosophy. Descartes' next step in the third meditation is to survey his own thoughts. He reasons the most important issue is the existence of God. He claims that if he can establish the existence of God rationally, he will have a foundation of truth concerning other ideas. This would guarantee the possibility of knowledge with certainty and bridge the gap between science and religion. God's existence and nature is crucial to Descartes' entire rationalistic enterprise, because if God is not a deceiver, then he will have given Descartes the ability to distinguish the real from the imagined. Descartes needs to establish the existence of God in order to establish the existence of the external world. Descartes first acknowledges that the idea of God exists. The fact that we have an idea of a perfect, all-knowing, all-powerful, infinite being as God proves his existence. This is backed up by a series of questions. How could I even have a notion of infinite perfection or want to be more perfect myself unless I have within me some idea of a being more perfect than myself? Or where could the idea of perfection come from? Only from a mind more perfect than ours. Descartes determined that he cannot have received the idea of God through the senses, nor has it suddenly burst upon his consciousness. God gave us reason and faculties of perception. They must be basically accurate and reliable. Descartes' ontological argument argues for the existence of God based on the claim that it is impossible to conceive or even imagine God without also thinking of existence. An ontological argument is an attempt to prove the existence of God by referring either to the meaning of the word God when it is understood a certain way, or by referring to the perfectly unique quality of the concept of God. Descartes believed clearly and distinctly when we grasp the uniqueness of the idea of God, we understand that the existence is part of God's essence. He states, "Well, from the fact that I cannot conceive God without existence, it follows that existence is inseparable from him, and hence he really exists." Descartes concludes his project by re-establishing knowledge of the objective existence of the external world. He reasoned that since he has a clear and distinct idea of himself both as a mind and as having a body, he must be of necessity be both a mind and a body. This idea must be basically sound, since God allowed him to know clearly and distinctively that he is both. Going back to his goal, Descartes' philosophy was designed to gap between science and religion. His hope was to prove that the discoveries of the physicists posed no threat to free will or the existence of an incorporeal soul by showing that the mind is different in kind from the body. However, the emergence of materialism, which is the belief that everything is composed of matter and can be explained by physical law, challenged religion. Descartes rejects the materialistic challenge with Cartesian dualism. Dualism is any philosophical position that divides existence into two completely distinct, independent, unique substances or kinds of things. Monism is the belief that everything consists of only one ultimate, unique substance. Pluralism is the belief in more than one substance. Cartesian dualism was Descartes' conviction that human beings are a mysterious union of mind and body, with each realm operating according to a separate set of laws. Descartes reaffirms the primacy of the soul over the body. He believed that human beings are essentially spiritual beings who happen to inhabit bodies. The dualism creates the mind-body problem. In other words, what is the relationship of the mind to the body? According to the official doctrine, they claim that the body and the mind are harnessed together by after the death of the body, the mind may continue to exist and function. They use the example of the soul being the driver and the body being the car. However, Descartes unites the mind and the body into one whole, and hopes to reject the materialistic view and bridge the gap between religion and science. In conclusion, Descartes was a rationalist who put reason above everything. Through his innovative use of the methodic doubt, he established one irrefutable certainty, the cognito. I think, therefore I am. Descartes claimed that God's existence was the foundation for all knowledge and for the general reliability of the natural light. His overall goal was to bridge the gap between science and religion, and he stands out as an archetype of the rationalist for his unwillingness to settle for the inconsistencies and contradictions between his faith and his intellect. And Descartes tried not to believe what he could not clearly understand. The end. I hope that this presentation will help you better understand Descartes, his philosophy, and what he believed. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. Have a great day. Thank you.